My name is Gloria Kimbwala. I used to work at Gitcoin, and now I'm the head of events for SEI. And we were going to talk about grants. And so if you know anything about me, is I love to make all my talks really, really fun and inviting. So I hope that this talk is fun and inviting for y'all as well. Okay, so I've been in the crypto space since 2017. I do head of events for SEI, but my claim to fame was, again, being at Gitcoin, like right after we spun out of Consensus. So I was hire number 8, and at that time, I did not know what like crypto grants were, and Kevin had this great idea that my first week should be a grants round. So I had to kind of dive in heads first and go through grants, and then I also approved grants for Octant as well. Through Gitcoin grants, at the time we were going through something like 1,000 grants, like within a couple of days of going through and just approving them and seeing like how do you approve them, how do you not approve them, things of that nature. But before even being in the crypto space, I was doing grants for nonprofits like Teach for America and things like that. So I kind of have a perspective of like what's it like to look at a grant from someone who had to figure out grants funding on the crypto side, but also had to deal with grants funding from like a Web 2 section. And in Web 2, I was always advocating for those who are historically excluded, so I can kind of understand like the barriers to funding and the opportunities that grants provide when we're talking about Web 3. All that is to say that my advice doesn't mean that you will automatically get a grant if you follow it, if you go at Gitcoin or anything like that. It's just some things to keep in mind of things that I look for when I'm reviewing grants and things that I think make strong cases. So with that, we're gonna have a little bit of fun. We're gonna use Belgium as our guide as to how can we take different little elements since we are in the city that will help us think about how we can write great grants. So the first thing I would say is to give it soul. So if you think of a Belgian waffle is exactly like a waffle, except for it's very distinct in its own way. And I think that when you have your grants that you're writing, to be able to use a framework that you had used for past grants, but make sure that you're giving it soul for the grant that you are applying for. So if you're applying with the Gitcoin grant and you wanted to go ahead and you do like a OP grant, you can't really go with the same like exact wording and say like, yes, it's going to be able to go back and forth. But also if you had a friend who was wrote a grant, you can't just copy and paste that grant. You need to give it your touch to it. A lot of times we can take a look at a grant and be like, oh, I think this is written by ChatGPT or something like that. And it doesn't have any soul as to like who you are, why you're passionate about it, and what you can do. So make sure you understand how the grant's gonna, how you could benefit from the particular grant program. That's like the first thing that I would suggest that you do. And then my key thing is like why this current grant right now would be the best time for you to have the grant. So basically make it hard for someone to say no. Why now, why you? And then like, you know, how do you stand out? Is it going to be like a different location? Is it your past? Like, what are the things that make it memorable in your mind? So, I forgot to load this slide. Basically, oh no, it's not the right copy. Hold on 1 second. I know what I did. Let me just see. Sorry. I wrote this on the train on the way here, and I think my phone copy is a little bit different. So we're just gonna keep going with this one though, because that's what's up now. Okay. So if the text is incorrect on this, I apologize. I'll get you new text when I'm done. Blame the no sleep. Okay, so make it memorable. There are Mary's chocolates, and making it memorable is just things that you can do to stand out. So if you're talking about it affecting a specific culture, you're gonna want to like, I always like it when you're talking with the language of the culture that's gonna be affected and start with that first. So if you give like kudos or whatnot, honoring the culture that you're gonna be utilizing. If it's a new motif, you can do it that way. If it's a new community, just some way to stand out. If it's a new approach, that's always great as well. Make it memorable to yourself. If you're speaking a language or using a a way that you communicate, make sure that that's the way that you do it. Reflect your community. You can reflect your community in languages, you can reflect your community in partnerships, you can reflect your community in the stats that you use. Just make sure that you're having community as your top of mind, and you're gonna want to think of your community when you're structuring how you're gonna promote your grant and who you're gonna engage with as well, and what the impact of that grant will have with the community that you're facing as well. Sometimes your grants can be super big or super small, but just understanding how that grant's gonna impact the community on a lot of different levels is one of the different ways that I look for when looking at a grant. Okay, so we always say think global, act local. It's great to have a grand vision. So if you want to like clean all the waters in all the rivers, or if you want to, save the rainforest, those are great visions to have. But beyond that, we want to also make sure you take time to actually fine comb your details. And so your details can be like, what is your actual plan of action? What are the key KPIs that you're gonna have? What are the milestones that you're gonna report at? Those are like the main things I look for. So if someone has a grand vision but has no way of executing that vision and has no reference beforehand, it's kind of gets tricky as to whether or not we should fund it, because I think all of us have these pie in the sky ideas, but having some type of way either that it's had been done before or that you can do it is always great. So have the small details, and then when you think you can hit those milestones. So if you're gonna ask for 10 ETH and it's gonna be over a year, and you're gonna have this thing done every month, then that's great. But if you want 10 ETH for a party next weekend, those type of KPIs are gonna be completely different, and you could get funding for both if you had great details on what that would be executing for. And then at the end, it's just knowing your numbers. What is it gonna cost? How many people do you think? And being really realistic. So if you're basing it off of Twitter followers and you have 300 Twitter followers, don't assume you're gonna have 10,000 people at a party. Let's be in the realm of realism, would be great. Last but not least is be your most authentic self. So if you speak a certain way or your vibe is a certain way, make sure that translates to the application. Connect with real people and make sure that the people that you are supporting in your grant are also real. I can't tell you how many times we've had to ask who this other person on this grant is, and nobody knows who that other person on the grant is, and that starts to have this whole aspect of fraud that can be kind of troublesome. So yeah, make sure you're connecting with real people. That's a key thing that we're looking for. Make sure you're using your own voice, so it should sound like you who wrote the grant, and when we follow up and have questions about the grant, it should still be a similar voice or have similar understandings of what you're talking about. Show your passion. If you're passionate about the one thing, it's great that you can show your passion in the grant. I love to allow people who are passionate to try their things. And then I always say watch your language, or use your language, use the language that you speak in it. Again, if you speak another language, using that first, especially if it's a grant targeting a specific community, lead into that. That's for two reasons. One is that when you do finally get your grant approved and you're shilling it, you're gonna want to make sure that the community that's gonna be affected knows the opportunities that are there. And the second one is just, me personally, I never want the crypto space just to be monolingual. I think that the more grants and the more resources we have in multiple languages, the more adoption happens as well. So use your language to your advantage. Okay, stay well connected. Try to, your strongest advocate in the grants rounds are gonna be people who will amplify your grants towards the other communities, people who can advocate for you, or who've known your work, things of that nature. Yeah, so be well connected. There's no harm in just asking someone to either retweet a grant or, amplify it. I know it's a lot of work, so be kind to yourself when you are in grants round seasons, but yeah. And then participate in whatever co-marketing that you can participate in. Reach out to different leaders and have those opportunities. Participate in different Gitcoin radios, or find advocates all over, and join the conversations. Yeah, I will have to say, like, never think a grant can be too big or too small. I know the first time I applied for a Gitcoin grant was to help the Democratic Republic of Congo, where my family's from, and I think we got something like $200 there, which is not like a massive grant when you think of, come from a U.S. perspective, but from a Congolese perspective, $200 was enough to do 5 different events around eco education and a dinner with Yale. And so I think that when you start to think about impact, like, don't think that a grant or a petition for a grant is too small or too big. I always try to say, like, it's better to reach into community pockets than to have to go out of your own pocket for multiple reasons. Even if you had the funds to do it out of your own pockets, it's great to have projects be amplified. And a lot of times we have tons of projects and we're doing a lot of work, but people don't get recognized for the work that they're doing, and grants are a great opportunity for you all to be recognized for the work that you're doing and to put that work out there for different people that you appreciate. So yeah, grants are just a little tool that we can use to make the world a better place for everybody. And so, like, write the grant, go for it. And participate and fund a grant if you can. There's lots of people in here that know a lot more about grants than I do, so feel free to reach out to them. But if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any.
So we have a couple of more minutes, so if you have any questions to Gloria, perfect.
I'm a total newbie in the space, but I have a project I would like to work on, but it's a kind of a big and ambitious project. Okay. It's a renewable energy community that run on blockchain. And how would I go about trying to find the grants that I could apply for?
Okay, so there's like... Microphone. Oh, mic. There's a lot of grants out there that you can utilize. So Giveth is a great grant platform that you can start to look at right there. Yeah, Griff is right there. He's from Giveth. Gitcoin, there's like a 2 ways that I can explain, like, grants within the crypto space. One is like, I want to do this event and I need funds for it. And then the other one is like, hey, I did this and it had impact and I think we should have funds for it. And so ones are like, the like quadratic funding, like Gitcoins and Giveth for events that are happening. And then there's retroactive fundings that you can do. And then there's like fundings within grants for each blockchains, like within their foundations too. So there's like a huge grants landscape that you could kind of utilize. For a huge project, I think you're going to have bits and pieces done at different stages, So if it's like, let's say it's a community, I don't know the insides and outs for your grants, but let's say I had to buy a land and then put like solar on it and then do things like that. For each stage, you would want to do a grant during that small grant window. And you can think of it like Gitcoin has its grants rounds, let's say next week. You could write a small Gitcoins grants for buying the land for this eco village. And then once you start to spread that within your community, Gitcoin would have to have like a renewable energy like pool, like a funding pool. And you would try to get that grant into that funding pool and share it within your community so that they could contribute to that grant and you would get matching grants or matching funds. So the long story is, you're going to want to start to look at the different grants that are in the spaces. I would start with Gitcoin and Giveth and like whatever the technology is that you want to put your, like build the blockchain on. That technology, I would start in seeing if there's grants available there and try to break your vision down into like tangible steps that you could do to get you to your end goal. Yeah, that would be it. Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, cool. Anyone else?
Perfect. Any more questions for Gloria? We have one more question window. Okay, so do you have a question? Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, like, what would you recommend? Like, so we write this grant. Like, is it better to put it like on more eyes? Like, send it to a friend, send it to a community. Like, how do you think this review of the grant should be, like, before we like submit the grant?
So I would say if you could get it on what I would say two set of eyes. One, just normal person, can you proofread this? I'm going to put it in for a grant. I really like when grants submit early because then they can get the feedback from some of the reviewers and like take that feedback and then take it back to the grants. It's harder when you submit later to get the feedback from the approvers. So I would say, you know, have a general person look over it just to proofread it and then try to submit it early and then get the feedback that the approvers have of it and apply that to your grant too. And I think that's the best way because the approvers will then will at least know what they're kind of looking for and their criteria. And I think if you spend too much time trying to have like proofreaders and another person, they might not still meet the criteria, and it's better to get the immediate feedback from the approvers. And sometimes it's something like, oh, this doesn't make sense. Can you clarify this? Or, you know, little things like that where it could be a yes or no on something so minor that just having it straight from the approvers' feedback would be most helpful, is my opinion.
Thank you, Gloria.